All right, let's talk about something that's probably on the mind of anyone working with LLMs. We're going to look at a new data format called TOON, and it might just be the answer to a very, very expensive problem we're all facing.
So, if you've ever used models like GPT or Claude, you know that feeling, right? You get your API bill and, ouch, it's surprisingly high. You've tweaked your prompts, you've optimized all your logic, but those costs, they just keep climbing. But what if the problem isn't just in your code?
Yep, you heard that right. The very way you're sending data to the model, the format itself, could be quietly draining your budget. It's kind of like this hidden token tax that you end up paying on every single API call you make.
Okay, let's dive into this hidden cost. See, every single character you send to an LLM, not just the useful data, but also all the syntax that holds it together, gets chopped up into something called tokens. And in the AI world, you have to remember, tokens are money.
Just think of tokens as the little building blocks the model works with. So the more tokens you feed it, the more you have to pay. And you guessed it, the longer you have to wait for a response. Every single one adds up.
Now for years, decades even, JSON has been the absolute king of data exchange. I mean, it's the language of the web, and for a lot of good reasons. It's human-readable, it's supported everywhere, but in this new AI era, its greatest strength has kind of become its biggest weakness. It's just too wordy.
JSON's whole structure is built on repeating keys and a ton of punctuation. All those curly braces, brackets, quotes, and commas. From an LLM's perspective, all that extra stuff is just noise. It's more tokens to process that don't add any new information, which just bloats your costs.
To really see what I'm talking about, let's use a real-world example. Imagine we're sending a list of, say, 100 popular GitHub repos to an LLM. It's a pretty standard task, right? Maybe for some kind of data analysis agent? Well, if you format that in standard JSON, the token count gets pretty big.
Yeah, over 15,000 tokens. And remember, that's for a single API call with just 100 items. Now imagine scaling that up to thousands of calls every single day. You can see how those costs just completely explode.
And this right here is the exact problem that TOON was built to solve. TOON stands for Token-Oriented Object Notation, and it is a data format designed from the ground up to be super efficient for AI.
What's so clever about it is that it kind of borrows the best parts from other formats we already know. It uses indentation for structure, which feels a lot like YAML, but its real secret weapon is how it handles lists of data. It treats them like a CSV file, which is a total game changer for cutting down on repetition.
So check this out. Here's that exact same data, or 100 GitHub repos, but this time it's in the TOON format. I mean, you can see it right away. It just looks so much cleaner, doesn't it? Almost like a simple spreadsheet.
And the token count? Boom, under 9,000. We just went from over 15,000 tokens all the way down to 8,745, and we didn't lose a single bit of information along the way.
That is a massive 42.3% drop in tokens. And that number translates directly into a 42.3% reduction in your API costs and faster response times, just for this one task. That's huge.
So how in the world does it do that? Well, it's actually really simple and intuitive. TOON's whole philosophy is basically define it once and then use it over and over.
So instead of repeating keys like name and stars for every single repository like you would in JSON, TOON just declares them one time, right at the top in a header. After that, it's just the data. Each entry is a simple row of values. All those extra braces, quotes, and commas, gone.
Okay, but here's where it gets really, really interesting. The benefits aren't just about saving cash. It actually turns out that a cleaner, more efficient data structure might just lead to a smarter, more accurate AI.
And this chart really tells the story. It shows what's called an efficiency score, which is basically a mashup of model accuracy versus token cost. And look at that, TOON is clearly on top. Benchmarks have shown that for certain tasks, LLMs can understand TOON's clean structure better than JSON's. So it's not just cheaper. In many cases, it's actually more effective.
Now hold on, this doesn't mean you should go and throw out all your JSON. Of course not. TOON is a specialized tool for a specific job. The real trick is knowing when it's the right tool to pull out of the toolbox. So here's the breakdown. You're going to want to stick with JSON for things like standard web APIs, where everyone in the world needs to be able to understand it. But when you're working with AI and you're sending big, uniform chunks of data to an LLM, like say the results from a database query, that's where TOON is an absolute superstar. It was built for exactly that.
If we take a step back, TOON isn't just some new format.
It really represents a bigger, more fundamental shift in how we're thinking about software. We're officially entering an era where we optimize our tools for AI.
I mean, just look at the history of data formats. Each one came along to solve the big problem of its time. INI files for simple configs, XML for complex documents, JSON for the rise of web APIs. TOON is just the next logical step in that same story, built for the defining technology of our time, artificial intelligence.
And I really love this quote because it just hits the nail on the head. TOON didn't come along and reinvent the wheel. It did something smarter. It took proven, battle-tested ideas from formats like YAML and CSV and just adapted them to solve a very new, very specific, and very important problem.
So, at the end of the day, TOON is really a sign of what's to come. We're moving past just building cool AI models and into a totally new phase. We're now re-engineering our entire development stack, from the ground up, to be AI native.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Data formats are just a start. As you keep building with AI, just think about this. What other tools that we use every day, the stuff we take for granted, are secretly costing us tokens and are just waiting for their own AI native reinvention?